He snubbed a black woman's hand. The insult cost him $3 billion overnight. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. I don't touch staff. The words weren't shouted. They were worse than that, spoken casually, lazily, with a laugh that tilted the man's head back as if the moment itself amused him. His hand stayed buried in his pocket. His eyes didn't even bother to meet hers. The black woman stood there, arm extended, palm open in a gesture so ordinary it should have passed unnoticed. A professional greeting. Clean. Respectful. Finalized 1,000 times in boardrooms, far more powerful than this one. But here, in the marble lobby of a global financial firm, it became a spectacle. The man in the navy suit, tailored, expensive, confident in a way that came from never being challenged, rocked back on his heels, grinning. His red tie was perfectly centered. His posture screamed ownership. Not of the building, perhaps, but of the moment. Behind them, the room reacted all at once. Phones rose. Not aggressively. Not obviously. Just enough to capture. A few people exchanged looks. Some smiled. Some pretended to scroll. No one stepped forward. The woman's hand remained suspended between them. She didn't flinch. Didn't pull back. Didn't force a smile. She simply waited. The silence thickened, stretching longer than comfort allowed. Long enough for the insult to settle into everyone's bones. A woman near the reception desk whispered something to her colleague. A man in a gray blazer chuckled under his breath, eyes already darting toward his screen. Someone else murmured, awkward, as if discomfort were entertainment. The man finally looked at her, then really looked. His gaze swept over her beige suit, her structured bag, the calm precision of her stance. Relax, he said, waving his free hand dismissively. This isn't a meet and greet. If you're lost, security can help you. Security. The word landed with intention. The black woman slowly lowered her hand, not in embarrassment, but with control. The kind of control that came from choice, not defeat. She adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder, movements unhurried, deliberate. Her face revealed nothing. No anger. No humiliation. No urgency to explain. And that, more than anything, unsettled the room. Because most people, when cornered like this, rushed to prove something. Their role. Their relevance. Their right to be there. She did none of that. Instead, she looked around. Not frantically. Not searching for help. She studied the space like someone conducting an audit. The polished floors. The logo etched behind the reception desk. The digital display cycling through quarterly growth projections. Faces she recognized. Names she knew not personally, perhaps, but professionally. The man mistook her silence for submission. He laughed again, louder this time. Hey, he said, turning slightly so others could hear. I said I don't touch staff. No offense. There it was. Not shouted. Not explicit. Perfectly deniable. A few people laughed. Real laughter this time. Relief laughter. The kind that said, good, he said it so I don't have to. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to the story. The woman finally spoke. Her voice was calm. Even. low enough that he had to lean in slightly to hear her. Noted. Just one word. No explanation. No correction. The man blinked, confused. He had expected defensiveness. Or anger. Or retreat. Not acknowledgement. She reached into her bag, then not hurried, not dramatic, and pulled out her phone. The screen lit her face briefly as her thumb moved across it with practiced ease. One message. No emojis. No pleasantries. Around them, the room exhaled, attention already drifting away, convinced the moment had passed. That the hierarchy had been reinforced. That the line had been drawn and accepted. No one noticed the subtle change at the reception desk when an incoming call flashed across the screen. No one noticed the executive assistant in the corner straighten suddenly, her smile fading as she read a notification. And no one noticed the man's phone begin to vibrate in his pocket once, then again because he was too busy laughing, too confident in the version of reality he thought he controlled. The black woman slipped her phone back into her bag and finally turned to leave. Not because she had been dismissed. But because she had already finished what she came to do. Behind her, the marble lobby hummed with business as usual, unaware that in a matter of minutes, that careless laugh, that refused handshake, would cost one man more than his pride. It would cost him everything he thought was untouchable. The lobby exhaled and moved on. Laughter softened into polite chatter. Shoes clicked across marble. The moment was already being filed away as nothing more than an awkward exchange, another harmless misunderstanding in a building full of them. The man in the navy suit glanced around, satisfied. He had won the room without raising his voice. Without consequences. He straightened his jacket and turned back toward the reception desk, already shifting his attention to more important things. That was when his phone vibrated again. He frowned, annoyed now, pulling it from his pocket with a sharp movement. One missed call. Then two. Then a third. All from numbers he recognized, but didn't expect to see together. He silenced the device and slipped it back, jaw tightening. Timing was inconvenient. He had meetings. Real ones. Across the lobby, the black woman moved with unhurried precision. She didn't rush toward the exit. She didn't look back. She walked as if she had all the time in the world and owned it. At the reception desk, the young assistant stiffened as another call came through her headset. Her fingers paused above the keyboard. Yes, she said quietly. Her expression changed almost instantly. She straightened, eyes flicking from the screen to the man in the navy suit. Then back again, as if hoping she'd misread something. She hadn't. Of course, she said, voice suddenly careful. I understand. She hung up and swallowed. Behind her, the digital display shifted. Quarterly projections disappeared, replaced by a neutral holding screen. No announcement. No explanation. Just silence. The man felt it then, that subtle shift in air pressure, the kind executives learned to recognize long before alarms sounded. He turned slowly. What's going on? He asked, irritation edging into his voice. The assistant hesitated. There's been a request, she said. From compliance. Compliance doesn't make requests, he snapped. They follow protocol. Yes, she replied. That's the issue. His phone vibrated again. This time, he answered. What? He said, already bracing. The voice on the other end spoke quickly. Too quickly. Numbers were mentioned. Accounts. Exposure. Words like paused, review, effective immediately. The color drained from his face. That's not possible, he said. Nothing moves without my authorization. There was a pause. Actually, the voice replied, lower now, it does. When it comes from the top. He ended the call and stood very still. Around him, people were starting to notice. Conversations faltered. Heads turned. The same phones that had risen to capture humiliation now hovered again, curious, alert, hungry. Across the room, a senior partner stepped away from a cluster of executives, his own phone pressed tight to his ear. His brow furrowed. He glanced toward the elevators. Then toward the exit. Toward her. The black woman had stopped walking. She stood near the glass doors, light framing her silhouette, one hand resting calmly on the handle of her bag. She hadn't turned around yet. She didn't need to. She felt the room before it spoke. The man took a step forward without thinking. "You," he said sharply. She turned then. Slowly. Completely. Their eyes met again. This time, he didn't laugh. For the first time since he'd entered the lobby that morning, he wasn't certain who was standing in front of him. And in that uncertainty, something far more dangerous than embarrassment began to surface. Fear. The black woman held his gaze for a moment longer, just enough. Then she nodded once. Not in acknowledgement. In confirmation. And walked out. They thought they had misread her. That was the consensus forming in the lobby as the glass doors closed behind her. A collective recalibration, subtle, defensive. People told themselves stories they could live with. She was a consultant, maybe. Mid-level. Important enough to be present, not important enough to matter. Someone adjacent to power. Close, but not central. That version was safer. The man in the navy suit clung to it. "She's with operations," he said to no one in particular, voice sharp, dismissive. "Probably compliance adjacent. They send those people in to intimidate. It's theater." A few heads nodded. Relief spread in small doses. Someone laughed. "Yeah. Compliance always overplays their hand." But the laughter didn't land. Because nothing had gone back to normal. The reception assistant was still frozen, hands folded too neatly in front of her. The digital display behind her remained blank, as if the building itself were holding its breath. A senior associate leaned in and whispered, "My dashboard just locked me out." Another murmured, "Treasury access is lagging." "That's never lag." The man waved them off. "Technical issue. Happens all the time." It didn't. He knew it didn't. But acknowledging that would mean acknowledging her. He turned toward the elevators, forcing confidence into his stride. Power, he believed, was a performance. And he had been rehearsing this one his entire life. Inside the elevator, the silence pressed hard. A junior executive cleared his throat. "Sir, should we notify legal?" The man snapped his head around. "Legal reports to me." The doors opened on his floor. He stepped out, already pulling his phone back into his hand, scrolling with urgency now, not annoyance. Unread messages stacked faster than he could process. Subject lines flashed by. Immediate review. Exposure alert. Board visibility. He stopped walking. This wasn't internal. Not entirely. This was upstream. Across the floor, a glass-walled conference room flickered to life as executives were summoned without explanation. Chairs scraped. Voices lowered. Someone closed the blinds. The man's assistant approached carefully. "Sir," she said, "the CFO is asking for you." "Now." He nodded, too slowly. Inside the conference room, faces looked up as he entered, tense, guarded. No one smiled. No one joked. The CFO stood, hands braced on the table. "We need to talk about this morning." The man scoffed. "About a compliance stunt in the lobby." The CFO didn't blink. "About a capital freeze." Silence. "What freeze?" the man demanded. "One of our primary funding partners has paused disbursements," the CFO said. No explanation. Just, paused. "That's not how partnerships work," the man said, louder now. "You don't pause $3 billion without a call." The CFO slid a tablet across the table. On the screen was a single line item. Clean. Clinical. Initiated by controlling interest. The man stared at it. "Who?" he asked. The CFO hesitated. Then answered carefully. "We don't know. The entity is layered. Private. Intentionally opaque." The man laughed, sharp and hollow. "Then find out." "We're trying," the CFO said. "But whoever it is, they don't want to be found." Across the city, the black woman stepped into the back seat of a waiting car. She exhaled not in relief, but in transition. Her phone buzzed once. She glanced down at the screen. Phase 1 complete. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Because by the time they realized who she actually was, the mistake would already be irreversible. The car merged into traffic without urgency. The black woman sat back, hands folded loosely in her lap, eyes forward. The city slid past the tinted windows in clean lines of glass and steel buildings she knew not by address, but by balance sheet. Her phone rested face down beside her. She didn't check it. She didn't need to. Inside the firm's headquarters, panic was beginning to take shape, not loud, not yet. It moved the way real panic did in corporate spaces, behind closed doors, in shortened sentences, in eyes that refused to meet. The CFO stood at the head of the conference table, jaw tight. "We're seeing secondary effects," he said. "Credit lines tied to the paused funds are triggering covenants." A board member leaned forward. "Say that in plain English." The CFO inhaled. "If this continues, counterparties will start backing out preemptively." The man in the navy suit slammed his palm against the table. "Then stop it." Silence answered him. "Whoever this is," the CFO continued carefully, "they're not posturing. This isn't leverage. It's control. Control." The word hung there, heavy. Across the table, legal counsel spoke for the first time. "We pulled the entity trail. The fund originates through a private holding company. Caribbean registration, Delaware shell, Luxembourg pass-through." The man sneered. "So a ghost?" "No," legal replied. "A fortress." Another pause. "Who signs?" the man demanded. Legal shook his head. "There is only one signature authority listed." The man's phone vibrated again. This time, it wasn't a call. It was an email. No subject line. No greeting. Just a single attachment. He opened it. The document was short. Brutally so. A notice of suspension, temporary, conditional, precise. $3 billion halted pending review. His name appeared twice. Once as beneficiary. Once as risk. At the bottom, a signature block. No logo. No flourish. Just a name. He stared at it. "Who is this?" he whispered. Across the city, the car slowed at a red light. The woman finally picked up her phone. She scrolled once. Twice. Messages stacked neatly. Updates, confirmations, acknowledgements. Entire teams moving without needing direction. She tapped one reply. "Proceed." Nothing more. The light turned green. Back in the conference room, the CFO's assistant rushed in, breathless. "Sir, we just received confirmation. The pause has triggered a broader audit." "External." The man looked up sharply. "By whom?" The assistant swallowed. "By the principal investor." "That's the same person," the CFO said quietly. "It's all the same person." The man pushed back his chair and stood. "No," he said. "This is a mistake. I would know if..." He stopped. Memory surfaced uninvited. A beige suit. An outstretched hand. A calm voice saying one word. Noted. The room seemed to tilt. Across the city, the car pulled to a stop beneath a tower of glass. The woman stepped out, heels clicking softly against the pavement. The building's name gleamed above the entrance, one she had approved herself years ago. The doorman straightened instantly. "Good afternoon, ma'am," he said, opening the door wide. She nodded once and walked inside. Upstairs, screens began to populate with her name quietly, efficiently threading through systems that recognized authority without question. Back at the firm, the man sank slowly into his chair. "Find her," he said hoarsely. "Whoever she is. Find her." The CFO didn't move. "We already did," he said. And for the first time that day, the man understood. He hadn't refused to shake hands with staff. He had refused to shake hands with the person who now held his future past, present, and rapidly disappearing in hers. The first real consequence didn't arrive with noise. It arrived with calendars being wiped clean. Across 3 continents, meetings were quietly cancelled. Not postponed. Not rescheduled. Deleted. Executives stared at their screens, refreshing inboxes that no longer recognized their authority. Inside the firm, the man in the navy suit paced the length of the conference room, phone pressed tight to his ear. Every call ended the same way. Polite. Professional. Final. "I'm sorry," one voice said. "We've been instructed not to engage further." Instructed by who? He snapped. A pause. Then carefully chosen words. "Our principal." He ended the call and threw the phone onto the table. "This is extortion," he said. "She's leveraging influence." Legal counsel shook her head slowly. "No. Extortion asks for something." The CFO didn't look up from the screen in front of him. "This is separation." Another alert chimed. A funding partner in Singapore formally withdrew. Then Zurich. Then New York. Each notice followed the same pattern: brief, neutral, irreversible. The firm's internal systems began to respond automatically. Risk flags rose. Insurance triggers activated. Algorithms did what they were designed to do when instability appeared at the top. They began protecting themselves. "Liquidity is tightening," the CFO said. "We're still solvent. But if this continues..." "It won't," the man cut in. "It can't." But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. No one was negotiating with him. Across the city, the woman moved through a private floor of glass and steel. The space was quiet, designed for clarity. Screens lined the walls, each displaying a different thread of the same unraveling tapestry. She stood at the center, jacket draped over the back of a chair, sleeves rolled once at the wrist. Not for comfort. For readiness. A man approached her, tablet in hand. "We've confirmed secondary exposure," he said. "His personal holdings are entangled with corporate guarantees." She nodded. "Proceed with the review." "That will trigger margin calls," he added. "Yes," she replied evenly. Another executive spoke up. "Once that happens, he'll have to liquidate." "Not immediately," she said. "He'll try to stabilize first." "And if he reaches out?" someone asked. She paused for the briefest moment. "Then we listen," she said. "We don't respond." Back at the firm, the man's assistant knocked once before entering, face pale. "Sir, the board has convened." "Without you." He laughed, sharp and disbelieving. "That's not how this works." She didn't laugh back. "They cited fiduciary duty," she said quietly. "Emergency provisions." His laughter died. He grabbed his jacket and moved toward the door, but stopped when another alert flashed across the room's main display. "Personal credit review initiated." He stared at it. That account was untouchable. Protected. Old. Or so he'd believed. The CFO finally looked up. She's not attacking the company, he said softly. She's isolating you. The realization landed with weight. This wasn't chaos. It was precision. Across the city, the woman accepted a cup of coffee she hadn't asked for. She took one sip, then set it aside untouched. Timeline, she asked. 48 hours, someone replied. 72 at most. She nodded. Good. Do you want to make a statement? Another asked. She shook her head. Not yet. Silence settled, not tense, not hurried. Controlled. Back in the glass tower, the man stood alone in his office, city lights beginning to flicker on below. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message he recognized. A request. For a meeting. He stared at the screen, heart pounding. Because now he understood the truth he'd missed in the lobby that morning. The handshake hadn't been a greeting. It had been an offer. And he had refused it? The meeting request sat on the screen like a verdict waiting to be read. The man didn't open it right away. He stood at the window of his office, hands braced against the glass, staring down at a city that suddenly felt unfamiliar. Towers he'd helped finance. Streets he'd never walked. Power he'd always assumed was permanent. Behind him, the door opened quietly. They're waiting, his assistant said. Her voice was careful now. Measured. No longer deferential. He nodded once and turned back to his desk. The message was simple. A location. A time. No agenda. He recognized the address immediately. Of course she wouldn't come to him. The drive across the city felt longer than it should have. Every red light stretched. Every delay pressed on his nerves. He checked his phone repeatedly, watching as alerts continued to trickle in: margin calls, board notices, market speculation. Rumors were already moving faster than facts. When he arrived, the building didn't announce itself. No signage. No logo. Just glass, steel, and silence. Inside, the lobby was empty except for a single receptionist who looked up, already expecting him. Third floor, she said. She'll see you now. No, wait. That, more than anything, unsettled him. Upstairs, the space was spare and immaculate. No excess. No trophies. The kind of office that didn't need to prove anything. She stood near the window when he entered, back to him, city unfolding beneath her like a map she already understood. He cleared his throat. Thank you for agreeing to meet. She didn't turn. You asked, she said calmly. I didn't agree. He swallowed. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Now she turned. Her expression was composed. Neutral. Not cold, precise. There was, she said. This morning. He gestured helplessly. If I offended you. You didn't offend me, she interrupted gently. You identified yourself. The words landed harder than any accusation. He straightened, trying to regain footing. You have to understand how these environments work. There are protocols. Appearances. Sometimes lines blur. She studied him for a moment, then walked past him toward the conference table. Sit, she said. He did. She remained standing. You refused a handshake, she continued. Not because you were busy. Not because you were distracted. But because you decided, in front of witnesses, that I was beneath a basic courtesy. That's not, he began. She raised a hand. I'm not here to argue intent, she said. I'm here to discuss outcomes. He felt heat rise in his chest. You're dismantling my life over a moment. She tilted her head slightly. No. I'm revealing it. Silence stretched between them. You built your position on access, she went on. On being the gatekeeper. The one who decides who belongs and who waits outside. He shifted uncomfortably. I built mine, she said, on leverage. Quietly. Patiently. Without ever needing your approval. He leaned forward. What do you want? She considered the question, then shook her head. This isn't a negotiation, she said. It's a correction. Outside, the city moved on, unaware. Inside, the imbalance was finally being addressed. She picked up a folder from the table and slid it toward him. Read it, she said. Then decide how you want to proceed. He opened it with trembling hands. And as he read, the last illusion he'd been clinging to fell away. Because this wasn't about punishment. It was about dignity. And he had already spent his. He finished reading in silence. The room felt smaller now. Not physically but structurally. Like the walls had shifted inward, tightening around him as the reality of the document settled in. He looked up slowly. You're the controlling interest. She didn't correct him. You've been there the whole time, he continued, voice thin. Behind the funds. The guarantees. The capital stack. Yes. The word was simple. Final. He laughed once, under his breath. Not because it was funny but because the irony was almost unbearable. All this time, he said, shaking his head. We negotiated for months. Lawyers. Intermediaries. I never once saw my face, she finished. That was intentional. He swallowed. So the handshake, he said quietly. That was a courtesy, she replied. And an assessment. He closed his eyes briefly. In his mind, the lobby replayed itself with brutal clarity. His laughter. The phone's rising. Her hand, steady in the air. The word he'd chosen so casually. Staff. He opened his eyes again. If I had shaken your hand. She interrupted him, not sharply, but decisively. Then we wouldn't be here. The truth of it landed cleanly. She moved to the window, looking out over the city. I don't expect reverence, she said. I don't need validation. But I do require baseline dignity. He stood now, restless. And this dismantling this is your way of teaching that. She turned back to him. No, she said. This is the cost of ignoring it. He gestured helplessly toward the folder. You're erasing decades. She nodded. You erased me in seconds. Silence fell again, this time heavier. What happens now? He asked. She considered him for a moment longer than necessary. That depends, she said, on whether you understand why this is happening. He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was quieter. Stripped of performance. I thought power was something you could recognize by how it dressed, he admitted. By who it resembled. She studied him. And now? He exhaled. Now I know it moves differently. She nodded once. That's the lesson, she said. Not for you alone but for everyone watching. He looked at her then, not with fear, not with resentment but with the dawning awareness of someone who had finally misjudged the room he thought he owned. Outside, the city lights blinked on one by one. Inside, the truth was fully revealed. And there was no undoing it now. The consequences unfolded without drama. No press conference. No leaked statements. No victory lap. Just systems doing what systems were designed to do once the truth was acknowledged. By nightfall, the board vote was unanimous. The man wasn't present for it. He sat alone in his office, lights off, watching the city glow through the glass as notifications stacked across his phone, each one quieter than the last, each one final. Interim leadership appointed. Authority suspended pending review. Personal guarantees under evaluation. He didn't open most of them. Across the financial press, language shifted subtly. No accusations. No headlines screaming scandal. Just careful phrasing. Strategic realignment. Governance concerns. Capital restructuring. Investors read between the lines. They always did. By morning, his name was no longer attached to the firm in the way it once had been. Titles disappeared from websites. Bios were revised. The architecture of influence quietly rerouted around him. In another building across the city, she watched the same information flow in real time. Not with satisfaction. With confirmation. An executive stepped beside her. The board has complied fully, he said. They've removed him from operational control. She nodded. Good. Market reaction is stabilizing, he continued. There's confidence now. She turned from the screen. Because the risk has been isolated. Yes, he said. You. No, she corrected gently. Him. The man tried to call her once more that night. She didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. He understood that now, not intellectually, but viscerally. The loss wasn't just financial. It was existential. The room that had always opened for him had closed. Not slammed shut. Just, redirected. And no one was rushing to hold it open. The next morning, as employees filtered into the firm's headquarters, the lobby felt different. Quieter. More deliberate. People shook hands more carefully. Made eye contact. Corrected themselves mid-sentence. Not out of fear. Out of awareness. Because everyone had seen how quickly power could shift when dignity was misjudged. Across the city, she stood once more at a window higher now, farther removed. The same city. The same towers. A different alignment. Her phone buzzed with one final update. All measures complete. She locked the screen and slipped the phone back into her bag. The work was done. Not because she had taken something from him. But because she had returned something to its proper place. Balance. The city didn't celebrate. It adjusted. Markets opened on time. Traffic moved. Coffee was poured and meetings resumed, but something subtle had changed beneath the routine, an unspoken recalibration of posture and tone. People listened more closely. In the firm's lobby, the same marble floors reflected a different energy. Conversations were quieter. Greetings more intentional. Hands reached out first now, not as gestures of dominance, but of acknowledgement. The moment had passed, but the lesson lingered. The man no longer walked those halls. His office lights stayed dark. His name lived on only in archived emails and restructured documents, footnotes in decisions he would no longer influence. He had lost more than position. He had lost certainty. Across the city, she prepared to leave. There was no entourage. No announcement. Just a coat lifted from the chair, a bag settled at her side. Another meeting awaited elsewhere. Another decision. Another imbalance to correct. An assistant paused at the door. Will there be any follow-up? He asked. She considered the question. No, she said. This wasn't about him. He nodded, understanding. At the elevator, she waited alone. When the doors opened, a man stepped forward, then stopped himself. Met her eyes. Extended his hand. She glanced at it, not with suspicion, not with triumph. She shook it. Brief. Professional. Equal. The elevator doors closed behind her, carrying her down and away from the building, from the story that would quietly circulate long after she'd moved on. Outside, the city greeted her without knowing her name. That was fine. She didn't require recognition. She required respect. and she had made something clear without raising her voice, without issuing threats, without ever needing to explain who she was. Dignity, she had proven, was not a request. It was a standard. One that didn't announce itself loudly but corrected the room the moment it was denied. The car pulled away from the curb, blending into traffic, leaving behind a city that would remember this lesson in the only way that mattered. Not as a scandal. Not as revenge. But as a quiet reminder. Power doesn't demand acknowledgement. It reveals itself when you forget to offer respect.